Not lovely. The Phoenix River Band and Vienna. Good afternoon to everybody. Good morning to you, Reggie Johnson, from all the way from Texas, and just back from your holidays, I believe, Reggie.
Yes, just back from Alaska.
Alaska.
Wonderful trip.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, we've got a busy one as always. We are talking about AI innovation and ethics. I'm Pierre Smith, and Substack author, and we have our weekly chat about AI innovation and ethics. We've got a lot to cover today. We're talking about Meta's secretly embedding their facial recognition into glasses. We talk about Salt Lake drying up before an AI data center takes over. We're quite worrying. World Cup. We've got to mention the World Cup safety guide for journalists. And then South Africans withdrawing their AI policy after it discovered it was written by AI. After that, we look at a Buddhist bot released religious robots. We all say AI overlaps with philosophy. It does, and business, of course. So we look at reducing AI carbon emissions, because we can't really talk about AI without considering the environmental impact. And then some really positive stuff. Anthropic's call for a global AI pause. A global AI pause. Amazing. Big thinking, big call. Is it real? And then finally, I wanted to do a little piece on being more AI findable using LinkedIn, a LinkedIn solution. So we'll talk about that at the end. And if time allowing, I'll mention this AI Game Breakers, which the London chapter was launched on Wednesday, and fantastic evening, amazing evening. Just posted a post about some of the thoughts that I had, 24 thoughts, single line thoughts from the evening. So we'll touch upon that. But I want to get cracking with Meta. Reggie, Meta have secretly embed facial recognition into the glasses that they have. So people are walking around the street. What could it do, and what's happening? What's the latest?
Well, that's a good question. So Wired discovered that they have this code, this ability, this feature on the glasses. It was not turned on their Ray-Ban glasses, that can recognize any faces that the person is wearing it is looking at. And the problem is, if you're at a protest, you can identify faces of people there for employers to take action against if they're not wanting that, or the government to take action against. We've seen the current administration willing to harass and prosecute people that disagree with him and have criticized him openly. And that's a theme that will come up again when we talk about journalists in the World Cup in immigration. So there's concerns that basically Meta, who have shown a willingness to cooperate with pretty much anybody that they can get a favor from, could have this working video network of 50 million glasses to identify people anywhere, because it creates a database, a list of faces that are on the phone, but Meta controls that list and can add to it and can access it. And so this is potentially a really good example of AI-enabled surveillance authoritarianism, and how Meta is setting itself up. Now there was a lot of backlash about this, and the New York Times reported on an internal memo where Meta was actually talking about, let's roll this out at a time when the privacy groups and the rights groups are distracted, so we won't get as much pushback. Internal memo of theirs talking about strategically rolling this out at a time when they wouldn't get as much pushback from privacy groups. So, I mean, this all seems very intentional. They withdrew the feature once they got a lot of backlash, once this became public. Again, wasn't turned on. They criticized the piece, generally not on the, they did not disagree with the fact that this exists. And but the author who wrote this, who we saw the post on, who shared this on LinkedIn, he had pointed out that he doesn't think that they created this feature to leave it off. So the question is, it's probably only a matter of time before they turn this on, and then who and what will have access to anybody's faces anywhere with 50 million moving units of video cameras able to identify people. And that's a scary thought when put into the wrong hands.
So how long did it last for, the glasses with the facial recognition?
Well, it wasn't turned on. I thought it was only from the time that Wired reported its report. I thought it was only a couple weeks before they removed it, but I could be wrong about that exact timing.
Yeah. So they've withdrawn it now, though.
That's the last I read, is that they had actually withdrawn it in the wake of all of this backlash. But
Yeah,
for how long? We've seen them withdraw things before just to come back out with them. So
yeah,
it's probably, if they were intentionally thinking of timing in terms of not getting attention from privacy groups, then it's probably just a matter of rolling it out at a different time.
yeah, yeah. Okay, that's worrying because it's hovering there, can be used, switched on, switched off. So we'll keep an eye on that one. Which brings us on to data centers and Salt Lake drying up. So this has been picked up by Raphael Brown, and kind of saying that this is Fox News reporting that this could be the biggest site in the world. And it shows the Chinese and the rest of the world that we're not messing around, says O'Leary on Fox News, that we're going to get this done, move it forward, etc., etc. While over here, the Guardian kind of just blatantly say it's irresponsible, and there's a backlash as Utah approves this massive data center, which is twice the size of Manhattan, so they say. So that's a worry, to have something that size. It's one of the world's largest data centers, if not the largest, covering more than 40,000 acres, 62 square miles. And despite the thousands of objections lodged by Utah residents, the environmentalists have warned that the stratus could imperil the Great Lake ecosystems, and that's including a critical migratory bird habitat, which is already under severe stress. So, I mean, I've got this sense that the lake is already shrinking. I don't know where I picked that one up from, but there has been talk before of the lake bed one day drying up. So it seems like it's kind of incompatible that this should be allowed to happen. But it's the repeat issue that's coming up again and again and again. With AI, we've got a huge amount of data that's required, which requires in turn a huge amount of electricity and a huge amount of water, a huge amount of minerals. And there is that whole issue that keeps coming up again and again. Now, you're in America, Reggie. Have you come across this in the States, that the
Yeah.
issue of Salt Lake?
Well,
Elsewhere?
not specifically the Great Salt Lake, but we've come across advertisements promoting data centers, and these companies are spending a lot of money to try to convince people data centers are good for your local community. They'll help fund the schools, but yet communities that have had data centers have reported there's a constant humming, there's pollution, it's not creating jobs for the local economy, and a lot of complaints. This was new to me, the Great Salt Lake situation, but what we're seeing is politicians are selling out their citizens. And the citizens, it's like if the company's MO is, if you can't convince the people to willingly adopt your product, work with favors for favors with a politician who can force it on them, because that's why 1 in 4 lobbyists is for the tech industry right now. And this is obviously, all they have to do is convince the Utah government, not the Utah citizens, and they get their way. They get priority access to water. Their concerns trump environmental concerns and the concerns of citizens who see it as a detriment to their community and their ecosystem.
Yeah. So Salt Lake City might have to be renamed or something if the Salt Lake dries up completely.
Data Center City?
Data Center City, Utah. Oh my goodness, that's frightening. Okay, well, look, let's move on. Something happened last night called the World Cup. The beautiful game has returned, and it's been hosted in America and Mexico and Canada, and very different approaches to the hosting of it in these three countries, I must say. Journalists coming in, though, Reggie, you spotted something about World Cup safety guide for journalists.
Yeah, the Committee to Protect Journalists, CPJ.org, put out a safety advisory for traveling to the U.S. And I had to admit, when I saw that, I had to do a double take because I'm not used to seeing this kind of information about people traveling to the United States. Usually, this is the kind of thing we hear about traveling to war-torn developing nations run by a corrupt dictator or such, where the law enforcement at the border expects bribes, or they crack down on anything they can find and can imprison journalists that might be critical of the existing regime. And that's kind of what they're saying exists here in the US. And we have seen the current United States administration willing to weaponize border control to prosecute and attack people who have openly disagreed or criticized the current president. We have seen this. This is something that's been going on now for ever since the second administration, and possibly the first, depending on your sources. But so CPJ, the Committee to Protect Journalists, puts out some warnings about really being aware of the risks, which include prolonged questioning at U.S. borders, device searches. They can confiscate your devices and search them, citizenship status and entry risks. They may ask for all your social media handles so they can research if you said anything critical of President Trump on social media and deny you entry based on these kinds of things. Again, I don't feel like I ever in my life would have imagined I'd be saying those words about entry to the United States.
Yeah.
But go ahead. They provided a safety guide where they talked about your risk analysis. Make sure your immigration status is not expiring within the next 6 months. Be aware of the data on your devices. Some have suggested to bring a work-only device without any personal data on it for the trip alone, so that they cannot confiscate a personal device with private data, and to identify a list of emergency contacts, develop check-in procedures with those contacts, and also keep emergency contacts on paper in case your device is confiscated. And make sure you've got a lawyer, the number of a lawyer, and prepare for increased scrutiny. And if you are pulled over, if you are taken for increased questioning, they said to cooperate, be calm and respectful, do not lie, because that can be a crime. Identify yourself as a journalist, and present your credentials. And they said politely decline device searches if sensitive information is stored, but be aware that this could escalate and they could force you to take your device. And that's where I think the idea of bringing a work-only device that doesn't have private personal information on it could be beneficial. And just contact legal counsel. Remember, in the United States, you have to openly say, I want to exercise my right to remain silent, or I want to speak to a lawyer before I give any more information. That's something that you may need to do in order to avoid being incriminating, and have the number of an attorney. And so it's concerning because we've already seen harassment of the Iran team and their team doctors, team reporters being heavily scrutinized, and a number of other places that are on President Trump's do not fly or do not travel list being scrutinized and harassed at the border and denied entry without a lot of reasoning. So it's concerning for journalists, but there are supports for journalists. Make yourself aware of them and be prepared.
Yeah, be prepared. Did you see anything in the States of scanning? I was told somewhere that you land, they ask for your phone, they scan the phone, which then super quickly scans your social media. Is that true? They can access from that route?
I know that I don't know exactly how they do it, but I know that they do check social media credentials. Social media handles. They have, with some people, applied scrutiny to see what's going on in your social media, to see if you've been critical of President Trump. Although ostensibly the reason is to see if you're affiliated with terrorists.
Yeah.
But right now they're defining terrorists as people that oppose AI or people that oppose President Trump in any way.
Yeah. Oh dear. Okay, so look, moving on to South Africa, we saw something in South Africa where it had its kind of policy thrown out, its AI policy, after they found it had been written by AI. And within that, they discovered that at least 6 of the documents, 67 academic citations, did not exist. We've been saying this for a long time. You've got to double check and be in control of your AI, and to double check the citations in particular. And my experience has been that I would say my experience of about half of citations that I ask for don't exist. In this case, it's 6 of 67, but my experience, it's been higher than that. But the net result was the AI policy document has been withdrawn until it's more vigorously and perhaps humanly presented. Now, we've had this before. There was one of the big consultancies presented something recently that was all AI driven and attached the usual bill, large bill to it. And when it was discovered it was AI generated, they kind of said, well, what are we paying for? We could do this ourselves. So there we have it, the dangers of sort of AI total dependency without checking. Even when they do check, they discovered that basically this had to be chucked out, which is shocking, really, for South Africa. So they've got to start again. But let's be a little bit more positive. Reggie,
throw in something
Yep.
here, Paul, real quick.
Yeah.
Robin Davis says it's time for everyone to have shadow social media profiles, which are clean, to submit to people that are checking. And he says, I bet somebody has already set up such a service to help create that for you. So if you have a clean social media profile, a clean one that doesn't say anything critical of the US government, maybe you can submit that one as your handle and have that one checked.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Robin. Good one. Let's get a little bit more. We've always said AI kind of takes us across the realm into philosophy and so on. But you spotted something interesting, Reggie, about the Buddhist bot. There is a Buddhist bot. Is this true?
Well, can a bot be Buddhist? I mean, that's a good question. You know, we talked about, is AI conscious? I think a lot of people say it's a next token predictor. It's not yet at a level of consciousness, but again, AI borders on philosophy. So Alex Banks posted on LinkedIn a video of a Buddhist group in South Korea with a humanoid robot monk. And yes, what they did is, well, to set the context.
The monk, sorry, Reggie, the monk is walking in front of the group of monks?
Yes,
the robot monk.
And he's wearing prayer beads and all the proper shawls and stuff, and is following instructions for folding his hands and bowing in prayer. And so it was loaned to the Jagyesa temple in Seoul for the morning ahead of Buddha's birthday. So this was a loanee. It's not a permanent monk, but it was borrowed. And one of the things that's going on in South Korea is that Buddhism is on the decrease, especially amongst young people, down from 26% to 16%. And for young people, it's only 8%. So the decrease has created a need to try to make Buddhism seem more relevant. And this is one way they've got a lot of attention for, is borrowing this humanoid robot. They say it's a $13,500 robot by Unitree. And it's, really interesting technology, but having it come in and take part in this celebration of the Buddha's birthday as a discussion of technology and the historical religions is an interesting juxtapositioning, you could say, of the modern technology and Buddhism. And we know Buddhism has been, or many sects of Buddhism have been, more accepting of technology and science than some of the other traditional religions, at least initially. So it'd be interesting to see, what is we've heard the Pope talk about recently about AI. What has the Dalai Lama said about AI? And what does Buddhism think in general? Well, here's an example of a confluence of religion and technology. I don't know. What are your thoughts on seeing that video, Paul?
Yeah, it's kind of amusing to watch. I love looking at Buddhist monks actually chanting and sending their prayers out to the universe, and I think it's lovely overall. So to see them walking down this hill with this bot draped in the orange-colored clothes that they wear was kind of interesting. Blatantly no attempt to put a human mask on it so that to make it look more human. So it was a declaration that this is a machine. But the open-mindedness of the Buddhists to say that this is a way of spreading prayers and thoughts and maybe engaging is certainly welcoming to see that they're not shying away from it. I must have a look at the Pope's booklet that's released on it and see what they have to say. I suppose maybe it'll help Buddhism. I think more Buddhism is good for the world. So if it helps stretch and reach out to people who want to talk to bots in particular or feel more comfortable within an AI environment, then it's a good thing. So when you bump into airports, you run out Heathrow or you're out in Abu Dhabi or Dubai, you've got these bots everywhere cleaning up the thing. You've got police bots now as well that you can report stuff to or talk to if you want to. But they're not as welcoming. Kind of the quaintness of that Buddhist bot struck me, with the orange, not sash, but cloth on them. It immediately says, I'm kind of Buddhist, to me at least. But then the robot head, it tells you, well, I'm a machine.
Yeah.
So it immediately configures in me a debate. And maybe that's a good thing to get people thinking more about philosophy, more about religion. So that alone, in my opinion, a good thing. So we'll keep an eye on that because we have talked about. Sorry, Reggie.
Do you think we'll see bots in confessionals in the next 10 years?
Well, there is such a thing. There's a confession bot already launched.
Oh, okay.
some years back. Yeah, a confession bot. So you can do it online, and it will, it'll listen to you and then issue whatever amount of prayers you should say to get the job done. Um, I suppose that could be akin to. Remember, we looked a few years ago at AI um, therapists in America.
Yes.
They were doing this because of the overwhelming mental health issue that they just the systems can't cope with the quantity and amount and scale of people suffering with mental health issues. So the idea was, can a bot, a therapist bot, at least take the first wave of discussion and then accelerate it to higher up to a human if there's any suicide issues in there, for example. And I thought that was quite interesting. They also discovered that younger people, prefer to talk to a bot than to a headmaster about their own personal
Yeah.
mental health. And I thought, well, that's very interesting, because if you asked me 20 or 30 years ago, more probably, um, would I prefer going to a bank and do a cash transaction with a human being, or would I prefer to talk to a robot that's embedded in a wall? And if I said to you, well, actually, I would much prefer a deal with a robot embedded in a wall than talking to a human being, I would have thought you're nuts. But isn't that the situation? We're very happy to engage with, what is a tiller, essentially? Somebody who gave you cash in a bank is now in a wall as a robot issuing you cash. And you would have thought, well, that couldn't be. But then I heard someone say, well, there it is. We all use ATMs, don't we? So we gratefully accept the wise distribution and the wide distribution of cash machines. And as someone said, well, you're guaranteed that your day can't get any worse when you're using an ATM in the wall. Now this is 20 or 30 years ago when ATMs started appearing in the wall. And remember make me think, my goodness, what a statement. So that there is a possibility that you're dealing with a human, that it mightn't be as smiley and cheery. If they're grumpy or they don't have the cash or whatever it is, it might end up being a waste of time and a negative customer experience. Whereas with the hole in the wall, well, you can't go wrong. There's never any problems unless they run out of cash, which is very rare. So I guess whether it's bots in Buddhist bots or if it's therapists, I think they did find that the therapy ones was helping deal with the scale of mental health issues in America at the moment. So
Especially with triaging and getting those high priority cases to humans, and that's where we would need to draw the line, is making sure getting cases where intervention is needed to humans, but as check-ins, it could be helpful. And I think that when it comes to talking to tellers, we're wired to be social. So much of our brains are focused on social interaction, and I think that that takes a lot of energy. And we're wired to conserve our brain's energy because our brain uses something like 1/3 of our body's calories, even though it's only like whatever a 20th of its weight. And so to preserve calories, it's energy saving to deal with an ATM rather than a teller, because
yeah.
you don't have to worry about your reputation or how you come across. And we're so overstimulated with so much information and social connection at times, or not real social connection, but social interactions, that I think for some people, it's a little bit of a reprieve to not have that extra drain on the brain. Maybe that's part of the whole your day can't get any worse.
Your day can't get any worse. Here's something positive, though. Let's talk about now. This might be a little difficult for some people, but reducing AI carbon emissions. So we know the amount of energy in AI is huge when we're using AI, and water and minerals and so on and so forth. But I saw this piece by Andy Crestodina back in May of this year about reducing AI carbon emissions. I thought it was interesting. I think we will need more of this, ways that we can be more efficient with the use of AI. I think this will become a bigger issue in time. And so Andy made a few interesting points. I'll just give you one or two of them, and we'll leave it for another day. But he's saying, think about the files that require more processing. And there's three factors that combine to determine how hard the AI has to work with any file. And so the three questions that you ask, these three factors. One, does the AI need a tool to open? Two, how much structural noise, tags, formatting styles, that sort of thing, does the file format require? And number three, is anything being processed as an image instead of text? And that's probably the one that caught my eye the most. Is anything being processed as an image instead of text? So some file types that have a lot of formatting and visuals, and these require much, much more processing power. So there's a simple way to remember this, and I'm going to stop here on this, but it's this. If you need software to open it, the file, it's expensive. So DocX, PowerPoint, XLX, PDF, etc. It's expensive, energy-wise. If you can open it in Notepad, it's efficient. So TXT, MD, CSV, and so on. So if you need some desktop software to open the file, then the AI needs libraries and tools to parse the file. And these libraries and tools add tokens and carbon cost. It may be obvious. You can sit back and watch all the AI work harder on these files. So if you can keep it on Notepad, it's going to be a lot less drain on the relative systems around the place. I'm going to park that one because it is a deep article that was written. We'll put a link to it on prsmith.org/blog so people can have a look at it themselves, and it goes into some detail which might be useful for some. I wanted to move on though and get to this big one, Reggie, and this is Anthropic calling for global AI pause.
Yeah, this is fascinating. You remember Anthropic recently said that their new Mythos model was too dangerous to release, so they weren't going to release it. And a lot of people thought this was PR theater, or AI theater, whatever you want to call it, trying to create this mysterious romanticism of AI being so powerful and so smart that it's too dangerous for humans, which we've seen a lot of in the hype cycle of AI, where they've said, different companies talk about it. Remember Sam Altman in OpenAI talking about how there was a GPT-5 was so close to AGI that it was practically AGI, and then it turned out to really be not much of an improvement at all. And so we've heard this overstatement. And so they recently said that, and then now they've come out and they've said we could really do with a global pause in AI development while we get on top of things. Now, this is something you and I have talked about on this chat for quite a bit for quite some time about the need for international multilateralism and cooperation for getting on top of regulation of AI, getting on top of catching up to it before we keep proceeding with this grow and go fast and break things model that we're seeing. And so this is kind of welcoming in the sense for Anthropic to say we need a pause. One of the rallying cries we've seen from the White House and from most of the AI industry is China's not going to regulate. So if we do any regulation, we're going to lose out to China. Well, that hasn't exactly been the case. We've seen China's been a bit more responsible than the US has been when it comes to regulation, accountability, in a number of things. We've seen more regulation and responsible AI implementation from China than from the current administration, which is trying to oppose any kind of regulation. And of course, as we mentioned before, the lobby of technology, which is 1 in 4 lobbyists in Washington, D.C., works for the tech industry. So they've invested heavily in no regulation, and we're going to say it's because of China. So now for Anthropic to call out, they've made some enemies within the AI industry for coming out and saying we need to pause development, and with the White House, which doesn't like the idea of pausing development. But, it brings up the question, are they just trying to continue their appearance as the moral AI company? We know that they said that they didn't want their models used by the government for weapons, a certain kind of things, and that they got castigated by the White House and by the Department of War for that. They've gained some market share for putting down their foot on certain things. So is this more of them trying to position themselves as the morally concerned AI company, or is this more of what Sam Altman has done with creating this sense of AI is so powerful, you better invest now so that essentially make him more wealthy? Or is this actually a genuine concern? And will it lead to anything, or just more digging into the heels by those in power?
Is there any traction, any response? Anybody saying we want to be part of this or we want to engage in this?
Well, I think that a number of people have come out in support of it. Both individual citizens as well as experts in the area have said this is a good idea, but they have already been saying that. We've already seen experts in computer science and in political science talking about the need to work together and to slow things down, or at least to have some more transparency with these companies, because one of the problems isn't just the speed, it's the speed and a complete lack of transparency. So when they say we've got a model that's so powerful that it's not safe, we don't know what they mean, and nobody really does except them.
Yeah.
So as far as traction, I'm not aware of a movement, although China has mentioned the recent talks between President Trump and China have indicated a potential willingness to cooperate on AI safety issues during a recent visit to Beijing. So that's not necessarily related. He also signed an executive order that allows the government 30 days to conduct a preliminary review of the most powerful AI models. However, that has also wording that suggests it's very ideologically driven to make sure it adheres to his own ideology, which is even more scary than if he hadn't submitted that. So yes and no. Is there traction? Is it because of Anthropic? We'll only see. Time will tell.
Okay, we'll watch this one, because wouldn't it be wonderful if that did happen? We will talk about Be Findable on AI, for AI on LinkedIn, tips and things you can do. We'll talk about that next week. Also, because we've come to, it's 1:31, so we're going to stop right now. We will also be talking about the AI Game Changers, who launched their London chapter last Wednesday night. I was there. I was on the panel. It was a fascinating night. In fact, I've posted today earlier, just before we went on air, kind of a summary of 24 little thoughts that I took away, one-liners that I took away from the evening, which was absolutely fascinating. Some great speakers overseas tuning in and local. So a great day, and congratulations to the AI Game Changers for getting the London chapter up and running. So congrats there. We'll tell you more about that. And
you'll have to tell us about your swim next week. Tell us.
Oh
about
yeah. Well, I'm in Dublin. Right? I'm looking out over the Wicklow Mountains. I'm going to go for a dip. I did also last week go for a quick dip in the Irish Sea, and then went up to Donegal to the Atlantic in the same day in the afternoon. And the water in the Atlantic Ocean was about 3 degrees warmer than the Irish Sea, believe it or not. Yeah. So yeah, I'm going to have a quick dip before we go out today as well. So saying farewell from Dublin to you, Reggie. Good to see you back. And to everybody else, we'll put the show notes on prsmith.org/blog. And we're going to see you out now with a lovely track. I really do like this track. It's called Vienna by the Phoenix River Band. And boy, are they a nice band. Have a great weekend, folks. We hope it's a good one for you. Oopsie, we got connection issues there. So we say farewell.